Firstly, I'll introduce about the course.
Okay.
So this is uh, oriented design. So this is the course, object-oriented design, and this is basically for interview purposes. So mostly in interviews these days, you will have a object-oriented design round where you are asked questions like design a library management system or design chess, and where you need to actually describe the classes that you are planning to have, the functions that are there. You don't have to implement them, but you need to uh, drill down at a lower level to what level, how you, in terms of how you are thinking to solve the problem. So it is different from a data structure or algorithm interview where you don't need to solve a very small, a very properly stated problem. That let's say there is a rook on a piece of chessboard at so and so position, where all it can move. You won't be solving this kind of problem. So if somebody asks you to design chess, you would be basically thinking in terms of what pieces are there, how can you make it more extendable. So there are pieces like rook, then we have knight, we have king, we have queen, we have pawns. All of these will be classes, and you will see that most of them, all you can do is move. Hence you will see that they share a common feature. So you, all of these classes will actually extend the interface called pieces. So this is something which you have to come up, that what is the class entity relationship you are thinking of. So there will be interface pieces which will have a function move, which will be implemented by all of these classes, and the move will basically handle how the pieces will be moving. Again, there are other nuances in the game, like there will be two players game playing on a chessboard. So person will be two. Person will also be a class. Then chessboard will be a class which will control all the squares and what pieces are in which square. So all of these you need to decide. Are you able to get that? How is it different from a normal data structure interview?
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Right. So So this is the main idea, that if I give you a real life problem, how do you think you can break it down into smaller components, and mainly they would be interested in class relationship, what interfaces you are thinking of, how they are independent, and whether it actually solves the problem or not. So you can make all of these things, but if your solution doesn't work end to end, you don't need to code, but the functionality wise, the story should be coherent. It should not be so. Till now, it's not coherent, right? It's just pieces on the board. Uh, Now, when somebody asks you to design a chess, you think it's something like a chess.com, where two players will be hooked up on one game. Players will pick a piece and move, keep on moving until the game ends. So all of this has to be translated at the end of the interview. So this is the main idea of the course, that given a real life problem, how you can break it down further. So I think one more person has joined. So hi Sunny. So can you introduce yourself? Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Okay, cool. So let me check. There is a chat message. Yeah, hi. So it would be good if you can tell me what workx you have and what background you have, so that we can having some mic issue. From your end or from my end, Sunny? I think other people are able to hear me well. Okay. So he also has a total experience of 5 years. So I think both of you are of the same experience. Okay, cool. So I was explaining what this course is about. So firstly, you need to know what you are going to study in this course. So let me formally introduce what this course is. So this is object-oriented design course, and this is meant for interview purpose. And obviously, it will also help you in your day-to-day coding job. But the main point of view which will be focusing is cracking some interviews. Now, object-oriented design, what this is about? So we will give you a real-life problem in an interview, and these problems can be like design online chess or automated parking lot or library, also advanced topics like design Google Map. So all of these fall under the category of object-oriented design. Now there are two parts in a design interview. So generally when we take interviews, there is a data structure round and then there is a design round. In design round, there we generally focus on two things: object-oriented design and system design, right? The system design is basically about how your systems have to be. So there you don't drill down to the code level. You just have to tell whether your system is scale or not, and how much system knowledge you have. Do you know what a cache is? Do you know what a load balancer is? Do you know what clusters are? Do you know what Hadoop is? So something like this is system design. Object-oriented design is a more low-level design where you need to actually solve the problem in terms of implementation. Obviously, we won't ask you to implement the entire problem, but let's say if somebody asks you to design a chess, then what they will expect is that you come up with all the classes in an online chess that can be possible. So you'll come up with chessboard, then you'll come up with person. Now, obviously, it is online chess, so many people will have an account. So there will be a class account. Then you will have, you are playing chess. So chessboard, now chessboard will have what? Chessboard will have pieces. And pieces can be of many types. Can be rook, knight, etc. Person, now person also, there can be of two types. One will be admin, one will be player. If possible, it depends on the requirement. Generally, there is admin, then there is a player. Then accounts will have also types like generally there is a feature of premium account or a normal account. Premium account will have some extra features. So all of these you have to take into account, and also you have to solve the one specific problem which you are targeting. So let's say if somebody asks you to design online chess, so you just don't go about designing the premium plan or something like that. The main goal most likely will be to design the system so that two people can play chess, right? So all of these classes are important, but the main problem you will solve is the chess game. So how the controller will be that one player can play a move, another player plays a move, and they keep on playing until the game ends. You don't have to write an algorithm for that. You just need to define the interfaces and classes you are talking about. So at the end of this course, the expectation, your expectations from the course should be that given a real life problem, how you can crack this object-oriented design interview, right? At the end, this will be the target. Now that the context is clear, if you have any doubt, please feel free to ask, okay? You can unmute yourself and ask over the voice chat, or you can ping on chat also. So now we will start firstly with basics, right? So this course will be of 8 weeks around. I will share the syllabus on WhatsApp. Today, so every week we will have two classes, right? Saturdays and Sundays. So this is Sunday class. Generally, week 1 will have two classes. So I will make this an introductory class where I will talk about the basic concepts that you need to know to solve any problem. So before proceeding, any doubts with respect to course or anything, content? Nothing? Okay. So firstly, let's start with basic funda, and we will try to glance over it unless somebody has doubts. So I hope you guys are aware about objects and classes. So please let me know your background, that's why. So all of you are from CS background? Like all of you have a day-to-day coding job?
Oh, yeah. I have.
Yeah. Others? Sunny, Swati?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm from CS and I have good idea of object classes,
Good.
and on day-to-day basis I do coding too.
Cool. So firstly, let's glance over this, and please feel free to stop me if these concepts are not clear. So classes are nothing but they are types, or to be precise, they are user-defined types. They can be user-defined or they can be inbuilt, but they are simply types. And objects, they are instances of the class. So in simple terms, you can have a class A which can define properties. Inside the class, you can have properties like you will have data members, int x, int y. Then you can have functions like void add, int x, int y, anything. And in order to use the functionalities of a class, you need to instantiate an object. So an object is created something like this, new a, and then you can do a.x equal to 5, a.y equal to 6, and you can also do a.add 5, 6, right? So this is object, and this is class. Obviously, the relationship is that object is the instance of class, right? So this is the high-level funda, which I hope everybody is clear. So now let's. So any doubts? I hope everybody knows about objects and classes. So this is what I'm assuming you guys know. Anybody who has any doubt, please feel free to stop me here. Okay. Now we'll move to the basic OOPS concepts. So the 4 paradigms of object-oriented programming, which are in cap, and these are very important. We might have studied this a lot of time in our classes in colleges, but your design interviews are just about these. Abstraction, inheritance, then we have polymorphism. Obviously, these are one word, but they mean a lot, and there are a lot of examples, and there are a lot of ways in which you can incorporate these concepts. So encapsulation. Now let's talk about encapsulation. So how many of you know about encapsulation? Anybody? We can make this an interactive session. Yeah, please go ahead. Unmute yourself and speak. That will be better. Yeah.
Yeah, encapsulation is something where we, bundle few of the things which a class or something has to do, and an object has to do, bundle it in one entity, and that.
That's right. That's almost right. Just one thing that we bundle it together. You are absolutely right, and we also hide it from others. So we don't want others to modify what we have bundled. So that is also one part of encapsulation, right? So what I mean is that you don't. So let's say if I have a class, let's take a real example. So let's say we have a class to add, right? So addition is a binary operator, right? So now you will have int number 1. So I'm not writing so you'll have 2 numbers, and then you will have a function add, where you'll take 2 numbers and you'll return. Right, let's say this is what you intend to do. But the problems in these are that in this class add, if I make object, I can modify number 1, I can modify number 2, but the functionality which we wanted was just add. So what we do is we make this element private. Now what do we gain and what do we lose by making this private? Can anybody tell?
Like only methods of the class can access the variables. That is
That's correct.
advantage.
Yeah, that's correct. So we
Uh,
added one layer of protection and
yeah,
we are losing something also here. What are we losing?
other methods cannot access them.
Other people can't access. Also, we need to have getter setter now. Now, if I make some field private, then I need some way to assign these numbers, right? How will number and number 2 get instantiated? Am I right?
Correct.
Is everybody
Constructor
able
or
to follow?
getter. Yeah.
Now you can have two ways. So you can either have a constructor. So constructor is generally, we use generally public. You can make a private constructor as well. Inside this you can define. You can take two variables x and y, define, or you can have a getter and setter. So you can have a function, let's say void set. You can take int x, int y, and you can do this dot num1 equal to x, this dot num2 equal to y. Right? So now the earlier thing was bundling, that we bundled things together, and now this final product that you are seeing is proper encapsulation. So these are public classes. So you have two public class, add and set. And now how people can play around with this class is very restricted. You can create an object, add, and all you can do with, so if you are using Java, then you will have to use something like this. C++, this would be fine. Now add can do only two things. You can set and you can add. Right? So you don't need to specify this. You just return x and y. Right? So only two things you can do. You can set and you can add. So now this actually is what you wanted to do. You had a class add, you just defined two members and one function. So obviously you were able to, and this is what mostly we make the mistake, that we know the functionality in our mind and we know how to achieve it, but and we also we can achieve it, but along with that we leave some loopholes. So if we didn't have these private members and only two public functions, our class would be unsafe. Now you have instantiated two numbers, you want to add them, but anybody can modify it from anywhere, and these are the loopholes that you don't want to come through, and these are the principles. If you follow, then most likely loopholes won't be there in your code. So this is encapsulation. Now before moving forward, is everybody on the same page or should I repeat it? Is it somewhat clear? People who have joined late can also chime in.
Can you please just brief, because I joined little late and sorry.
Okay. So we were discussing encapsulation in object-oriented programming. There are four paradigms or four parts in it. So firstly, we were discussing about encapsulation. So encapsulation is basically bundling or binding data and the functionality together inside a class, and also protecting them from other classes. So how you can protect them? By using access modifiers like private, protected, public, and you have to keep the functionality of the class in mind. So we can take another example. So we're talking about encapsulation, and let's say I ask you to create a class. Create a class. Let's keep it simple. We did addition, so let's do something a little different. So we can create a class to numbers. Other than numbers, what can we do? To, let's say we have a class called chess, right? So let's say I simply make not chess. Let's be more specific. So let's say that you are trying to come up. I don't want to make it complicated, so let's just keep it multiply. So you're making a class for multiplication, right? So now multiplication is a binary operator. So these things you will do, you will define two members, you will define one function, and you will return this. Right now, there are some loopholes which you would have left in this, like if I create an object of type multiply, then I can, so this is how you would probably implement this. You would do mul.x equal to 3, mul.y equal to 4, and then you will do mul.multiply, and this will return you result. So this is fine. With functionality point of view, you are able to implement what you want to do, but the loopholes that you are leaving is that anybody can modify these numbers before you are trying to multiply. So let's say somehow, due to a bug, if I can do this, then what your intention was can be changed. Not necessarily this can happen here. Let's say there was a function inside which somebody played around with this object. So you are basically giving a loophole to modify your two numbers before you can call multiply, right? So now how you can protect your data generally is you expose only what is important and you hide what's not important. So you can make these private, public function has to be public. Now when you make these two things private, you need to have a way to input this, right? Now I can't do mul.x and mul.y because these are private. So we can either set this up in the constructor or have a getter and setter for this. So this is the main idea of encapsulation, right? Now nobody can do something like this. So you will only be able to do mul.set 3, 4, and then you can do the multiply operation after this. Or if you are using the constructor way, then you will do something like this. And after that, when you do mul.multiply, you will get your answer. And there is no way in which a person can modify 3, 4 because these are private fields and you haven't exposed anything, right? So this is the main idea. Now let's move forward. So this was encapsulation. Coming to point number 2, which is abstraction. Now there is a lot of confusion generally when we study encapsulation and abstraction. How are they different? Thing is that they are very close. The encapsulation is bundling together of data and functions and keeping it in one entity and making sure that only what is needed is accessible. Abstraction is again the same thing, exposing only what is relevant and hiding others, but it is done at one level up. So for example, I was taking example of chess. So let's say you have a chess game, right? There are many pieces in chess. You have rook, you have a knight, you have king, you have queen, right? And all of them, there is pawn. I think that's all. Nothing else is there. And all these can do is they can move. One of these, the thing they can do is they can move. And if you see the functionality wise, they can, all of them do the same thing. They can move, they can cancel other pieces. They can basically only these two things, right? They can move and they can cancel other pieces. So if you practically see, everything is a move. If the move coincides that your move's destination is at a point where another piece is there, then that's cancellation. So all a piece can do is move. So in such situation, what you do is you create an interface or abstraction over these pieces, and it is a very generic abstraction. What's the use of it? Let's firstly see. So all of you would have heard about interfaces. If you use Java or C#, you would have heard of interfaces, right? Anybody from any other programming paradigm? Interface is something everybody is aware of, right? So what an interface is? So interface is a very generic abstraction over specialized use cases. So let's say Facebook, right? So in Facebook, we all create accounts, right? My name is Aditya Prakash, your name, let's say Sunny, then let's say XYZ. Many people can have accounts, but all of them can be a generic class, let's say account, because the functionalities we can do are same. So what I can do in my Facebook profile is what Sunny can do. Obviously, you won't see my data or I won't see your data, but functionality wise we are same. So we can create abstraction which is called interface. And the advantage of the interface is that you can define the basic functionality. So let's say I define move here. Now all of these, my specializations will have to have a specific definition for move. So what I mean is that now what you can do is you can instantiate. So you so what abstraction is that now you have this function move, and move is over the generic type piece. Now if you use the generic type move, it will also work on a specialized type. So it's hard to explain. So let me actually give you an example. How can you use traction? So let's have one project to explain this. So I'll make a console app. Don't worry, it is very similar to Java. I'm using C# because I don't have a Java IDE as of now. Just so you guys are able to see my screen, right? Hello? Everybody is able to see my screen?
Yes.
Right. Cool. So what I was saying is that let's add the interface. Right. Now this is my interface piece. Now, can somebody tell me? So functionality-wise piece, all it does is what other things will a piece have? Have position, right? So how do we define position in a chess? Chess is nothing but a 2D matrix. So using two variables, you can define what is position. So 1 second, we have something in chat. I think most of you are muted. So we will have position. We can have X position, and we can have Y position to define what these are, and you have to specify the. You can either make them public or you can either make them private. Now, generally, we don't in C#. There is a restriction. You can't have members because there is a concept called property. So you can simply ignore it. In Java, there is no such restriction. You don't need to specify the type. This is fine. Now, what I was saying is, let's say that you have, sorry, this. So now you have, let's say I add more items. I add class. And also add more class. Right? Right. And let's go to class night first. And all we do is we say
Can you, Aditya, can you select a class instead of interface, because it is like while adding a new item, you are selecting interface.
You can just change it.
Okay, thank you.
So implements is something which we use in Java, right? In C, C++, all you need to do is, this is already implemented. So we need to import this. Let's see, why I'm not catching this up. Just piece, just piece, night, means piece. I think it will say So now you can see the error message. Night does not implement piece.x position, y position, and move. So this is what I was talking about. So when you define a generic class, that my piece will have these members. We will have x position, y position, and move. And now these are public. So what firstly I will do is I will make the getter and setter public, but the member is not accessible. You can so you can set it publicly and you can also get it publicly. But if you want to make the setter private, then all I can do is this. It's similar to making a private or not, but the thing is that you can't do it in an interface. In an interface, you have to keep it open. Inside the implementation, you can define it. So now I have two variables, x position, y position, and move. Now, let's say I am inheriting night here. So it won't allow me to create the class unless I define x position, y position, and move. So now all I need to do is that I need to create these members, x position, get, y position, get, select. And now you will see that the error is cannot implement because it is not public, right? So you make it public, make this public. There is no access modifier concept inside the interface. That's why these errors. And now you will have only one error that you need to define move. So now we will define public void move, right? And now we are done. What's the error? Must declare a body, of course. So we have a body, and we will just console dot write line. And all we will do is write. That's it, right? Now, if you want to play, if you want to make your setters private, what I was saying is you can do this. In Java, there will be a separate implementation where you can make it separate. So depending upon the class today, I will modify the programming language I'm using. So I'll firstly like to know, like, what programming language do all of you use? Does everybody is familiar with Java, C++? What's the class looking like? Right, C++. C++ is fine. C++ is fine. Java. Let's see what's the majority. Java and C#. Java and C# are similar, but there are nuances. I don't want to confuse you guys. So if everybody knows Java, I will move to Java. So no problem. I am familiar with both the languages. 1 second, sorry. Let's see. You can unmute and say also, but make sure you mute it after you speak. Both Java and C#. It's fine. So I think everybody is on the same page. Right. So this is how you define an interface. And now we will come what abstraction is. So we will just copy paste this thing in Rook. Now, and I'll just explain the same thing before. So when you create piece, you will see that it is interface, so it's class. And you will see it is red, it is showing error that you need to implement these fields. Otherwise, it won't allow you to build. And once I do this, it's fine. And I make right. So this is what I did. Now I can go to my program.cs and let's do some basic stuff here. Firstly, I think this is a console application. So to hold the console screen, I will just add this. You can ignore this link. And firstly, what I want to demonstrate is how interfaces are used. So you'll have a piece, right? Now, let's say I try to do this. What happens? You can't do this, right? So an interface, you can't instantiate an interface because interface is not a defined entity. It is a generic type. So you can't create an instance of this type. But what you can do, what the interesting thing is, let's say you define a root class. Root. You define night. Right? If you do this, and if you try to do something like this is perfectly valid. So this is what I was talking about. So generic types. So because rook and knight are of type piece, so I am allowed to point a reference of piece to a specialized class, but I'm not allowed to create an instance of type piece. And this is true in any programming language because this is the heart of abstraction or interfaces. Now you can also do the same thing for, let's use the same variable for knight. It won't allow me. Yeah, you can do the same thing for knight. So this is possible. And now let's come to the main thing which I was talking about. So let's say that you only have one reference for this piece P, and all you do is P equal to rook, and then you do P dot move, then you do P equal to knight, and you do P dot move, and the result is what you expect. So even if I'm calling the same function on the same reference move, but since I'm assigning it twice, you'll see that the result will be the what you are expecting for. You will make the rook move and you will make the knight move. Right? Rook moves and knight moves. So this is the main idea of abstraction. So abstraction is basically what you did. You abstracted out the move function of your piece to your generic type interface piece, and then you are moving from that generic interface. So what are the advantage of doing this? The advantage of doing this that I don't need to care how many specializations are there. Tomorrow I can go ahead and make pawn. I can go ahead and make right. I can just go inside. Let's see what I'm talking about. So if I make one more class inside this class pawn piece, and then I do the same funda, copy paste this thing here. Obviously, this is not a good practice. You should create a new file for a new class, but saving time. Right. So you create a new pawn, and all you need to do, let's say I and some other guy are working on the same project, and let's say chess got modified, right? A new piece got added, and this is how extendable my chess will be. That if I need to move a new piece, I don't need to think anything. All I need to do is P equal to pawn, and obviously before that I need to define my piece here. Pawn equal to new pawn, right? And obviously I need to make this. And now to move a pawn, I don't have to look up its definition or something because I know that it is of type piece, so move is already implemented, so all I do is move. So this is the advantage, that you are hiding the implementation of a specialized type inside the class. Obviously, this move function, this move function inside rook will be different, inside the knight will be different, and inside the pawn will be also different. Currently, I'm just printing something. The entire implementation will be different, like X position and Y position will be modified differently. But your controller or your program is not affected by it. You just go and move. Let's say what happens if I didn't have an interface. Then what would happen? I would have three classes. Now anybody can write, instead of move, somebody can write pick and move. And now, what the hell? Somebody can write this, and now when you are implementing the class, you actually you are calling different functions for different classes, different types, even though the functionality is same. Now your code is becoming less and less maintainable. You know, pawn you're calling pick and move, for knight you're calling move, for rook you are calling let's say travel straight or something like this. Instead of move you are calling travel. Now this is a nightmare to maintain. But if you use something like this, and let's say you come up with a stupid name like this, you are breaking the convention, you won't be able to compile this. So if I build this, I will get error. Right? I need to have I need to follow my interface. So this will denote what my things are doing. Obviously, interface doesn't mean that only these things you can have. It means minimum these things you should have. I can have more functions here, like for a knight, for a pawn. Let's take example for a pawn, right? What is special in a piece of pawn? Now, a piece of pawn can get upgraded if it reaches the last square. So I can have a public function word upgrade, and it will allow me, because it is specialized to this class, right? And it won't throw any error. So you can successfully build and work on this. It won't throw any error. So this is the idea. So now coming back to the idea. So this was abstraction. So abstraction is basically throwing back the responsibility to a generic type. Let that type define what the functionality is, and then we know what are the functions and what are and what not, and we just call those functions. And we are sure that if, let's say, any new addition comes, if any new XYZ piece comes, again it will have a function move. So your code is more maintainable. Imagine this piece was not there, so then everybody defining their own methods, their own positions. Let's say it doesn't define X position, Y position. It has also started defining some random things here. Now it gets more and more difficult for a implementer or for the guy who's writing the controller where you are moving things to know what are there in classes and what are there in these classes or not. But if it is associated to an interface, you know what is there and what is not. So does it make sense? So are you guys able to follow this interface paradigm? Any doubts? People are able to get it? Yes, no? Yeah. Cool. So this was a little about abstraction. Obviously, this is not how we'll cover topics. Today we are introducing you to concepts so that you understand how things are in object-oriented programming world. We will work on a lot of encapsulation abstraction problems throughout the course. This is just the introduction. Obviously, you need to know before we dive deep, right? Now let's come to inheritance. So as I said, let's make this class interactive. This will also help me know that how the class is, how much you guys know, and how much deep I need to go, or how much basics I need to cover. So can anybody tell me what inheritance is? In whatever programming language you use, what is inheritance? Because the funda is same. Even if you are using any other programming language, the inheritance concept won't change. So can anybody tell me what inheritance is? Anyone? Yeah, please go ahead. Just unmute yourself and go ahead, speak. And after speaking, just mute yourself because people are not able to hear later. Yeah, please go ahead and say.
Yeah, in inheritance, there will be a parent class and a child class. A child class can can have the properties of parent class also.
That's right.
It can use the methods of parent class.
That's correct. Definition was that's exactly right. But so that's the right answer. And if I ask you what's the use of inheritance, what would you say? Why do you do this? What's the use of it?
Inheritance, like we can if a base class has some values, and it can be inherited by multiple child class.
The
No need to.
example that I gave, right? It was one example of inheritance. Piece class was the base class, and other rook knight inherited or implemented the interface, right? Then it had to implement the move. So this is also a type of inheritance, but not entirely inheritance. Inheritance can be between two classes also, right?
Yes.
So now the main objective that you achieve out of inheritance, as Swati correctly mentioned, is that when you inherit something from a class, then all the properties or all the functions of the class also you inherit. Obviously, there are exceptions. There are access modifiers which prevent some of the functions to be inherited. But in general, if your functions are public or let's say protected, and you inherit from the class, then you inherit its members also. You inherit all its public and protected members, right? Now, what's the use of it? So let's see what's the use of this. So we took one example, right? Peace and rook, knight. So this was one classic example. Now this was interface. It is a little more strict concept. Interface is a more free concept because I was not able to declare a class rook unless I define move. And this is not how inheritance works in general. In general, if I'm let's not mess up with the same example. Let's keep it here. In general, let's pick a different example. Let's say we have a class automobile. Right. So what's common in all automobiles? All of them have engine. So let's say all of them have engine. And now what can automobile be? So firstly, we can have cars and they extend or implement or colon, whatever you use in your language, you write automobile. So you don't need to worry about engine now. So engine is automatically coming here if this is obviously public. If it's private, it won't. What automobile can do? Other things. Automobile can. It will have engine. It will have wheels. It will have a manufacturer. So manufacturer. Let's say there is a manufacturer also. Now, what can be automobile? So cars is a type of automobile. So it will extend from automobile. So it will have engine and manufacturer automatically in it. But car will also have unique things, like because car has 4 wheels. So it can have wheel, 4 wheel, let's say, just making things up. And then you can have scooter, which also extends from automobile, and it has 2 wheels, right? So it will have can have a wheel array. Common thing, they are inheriting from automobile, so they don't need to worry about engine and manufacturer. They are automatic. So if I create a instance of type scooter, then sc dot engine is a valid syntax because engine is defined in automobile. So the advantage clearly that you are getting is you are not creating multiple occurrences of the same thing. So and this is very important. So this reduces the scope of error. If you don't have redundancies in your code, it's good. As less redundancies as you can have. So you just define engine here and you are extending it to your scooter class, and all of it is inherited to scooter, right? If you are making it public. You can have private properties and private functions inside automobile, they won't be inherited. So you control inheritance. Inheritance is a more free concept that you can have a class, and if another class inherits it, it inherits all its public properties and members. Is there any doubt in inheritance? Any questions? Anybody wants to see implementation, how inheritance looks like, or everybody has seen inheritance? You want me to implement something, then please ping. Everybody is cool. Should I move forward? Okay. So moving forward. Yes. So now we have the last paradigm of, it's called now again, polymorphism is something which we touched upon in that. So if you polymorphism, firstly what it means. Polymorphism means one name, multiple functionality. This is in a layman term. in Google you might get a little different. So it will have one name but multiple functionality. For example, exactly the example that we did. Piece has a function move, right? And all other classes also have the same function move. Now, if you see your program.cs, all you are doing is calling move, but they are behaving differently, right? Well, when I run this, then the same function is giving multiple different outputs: rook moves, knight moves, pawn moves. This is classic example of polymorphism. This is also example of polymorphism. It's not just abstract. So abstraction was that I abstracted these classes to a generic type called piece. Polymorphism is that move, but there are other types of polymorphism as well, which I can explain you. So let's say this will also be a polymorphism. So I will mess with this class. We'll create a new function, sorry, class. Make this add, right? There's a classic example. So I will have add x and y and then function would add, let's remove this. You need to tell me with what you want to add with. X into y. You will return x plus y. And I can also have, what's the problem? Terms forward y. Okay. That's fine. Since y returns word option. Right. So you have add, then you can have int add. Let's see what the error is. Yeah, I need to return something. So this is also a type of polymorphism. So one name, multiple functionality. So one add is adding 2 numbers, another add is adding 3 numbers. Right? So there are many types of polymorphism. So you can have one name. So one function name having 2 functionality. Then polymorphism can also be in base class and derived class, like we did, right? Interface. So this is your example of piece and rook with respect to function move, and then you can have inside a class. So the example is the add function, right? So these are 2 types which I can think now. There are other forms of polymorphism also, which are generics. So we'll deal with them as it comes. Templates or generics, they are also a type of polymorphism. So till here, any doubts? Any questions? Guys, feel free to ask any question if you have. Okay, cool. So this is the basics, right? So if you have any doubt, then feel free to ask, because after this we'll move to the implementation, the actual real use cases of this. And these definitions, it's not, I don't want you to know what encapsulation is, what abstraction is, like name and functionality, but I need you guys to know that what are these concepts. So I don't want that if I ask you tomorrow, define polymorphism, I expect an answer, but at least you should know these are the things, these are the paradigms which object-oriented programming has, right? That you need to bundle data. So let's revise. So firstly, we did encapsulation, which means we bundle the data and variables inside one entity, which is called a class. And we also make sure we only expose what is relevant. Abstraction, now it is an extension of encapsulation, which includes encapsulation as part of it, but also it is valid for abstracting things over specialized classes, like we did for piece and rook, knight, etc. Then we had inheritance. So wherever there is a fundamental of parent and child, you can have an inheritance over it, so that you don't redundantly keep defining members and functions. You can reuse them. Again, polymorphism. Now, polymorphism is the one function having 2 or 3 different use cases. Now, the use is that the functionality is same, right? Just because we don't want a language just because the same function can't be used again and again. We need to modify move 1, move 2, move 3. We give you the functionality. You just call move, and we will change our behavior depending upon X so and so use case. If it's inside the class, then depending upon the parameters, the functions differentiate. If it is base and derived class, then depending upon the specialization, the behavior of one function keeps changing. So this is the main concept which will be used throughout. And now let's come to how to approach object-oriented analysis. Right. So how to approach object-oriented analysis or object-oriented design question. So these are the steps which you do, I think helps. There's no fixed set of steps, but I like to tell them because it in 99% of cases it will help. So identify the interface, if at all it can exist. Just see if you can have a generic interface for the specialized behaviors or not. Step 2, identify classes. Now, once you have defined interface, come to the specialization, define them. After you are done with these two, you need to identify relations. So you need to say what is the relation. So like in chess, you have pieces, you will also have person. Now, what is the relation between person and piece? A person can pick a piece and move. So now there will be a relation between person class and your piece class. How to establish that? So this talks about this thing. And finally, after you are done, you implement. So first 3 steps, I would want you guys to document it on a paper. So once you are given a problem, so write interface, classes, and relations on a paper, and then start implementing. And turns out that this is a logical way, and this is how many people do it. So we have defined something called UML, which is nothing but Unified Modeling Language. It is a unified modeling language because everybody understands. So when you are drawing an interface, you are drawing a class, and you are drawing relations between them, there is a proper semantic or a syntax in which you can do this. The advantage of this is, if let's say you draw something on your paper, it might be rubbish for me because I don't get anything, but you understand it really well. Now, unified modeling language is a tool in which if you draw something, it's globally recognizable because like that's the convention. It's like a programming language. So your idea can be propagated to others if you follow UML. So we'll slightly touch upon this. I don't want to go in much UML because it's for it will help you in your implementation. And obviously, if you use proper UML notations in an interview, it also will leave a good impression of you. And more than an impression, I would say.
Your voice is not clear to us.
Sorry?
Your voice is very low. And these ads are coming, these are little distracting to me actually.
So is this just your problem or others are also having the same problem? It might be some internet issue at your end. Is my voice low for others as well? Do I need to do something? Or you guys are able to hear me well? Okay, voice is low, goes up to now. Cool. Okay, so I'll try to come more close to the headphone. Is it better?
Now it is better. Actually, I was at 100 volume only and I was not able to.
Cool. So just a second, let me use my headphone. Yeah, so I hope this will be better now. So now let's. Okay, so yeah. So now let's discuss UML. So UML will help you in drawing these diagrams. But before doing UML, let's see what this exercise actually looks like. So let's take the example that we have been taking. So if I ask you to design chess, so what all considerations you will do? So or to be more precise, so online chess platform. So if you want to design this, how would you approach this? Any inputs? How would you start by?
So we'll identify which all components are required in chess, like pieces, then
So first you
players.
identify the interfaces. So,
Yes.
so what will be your first interface? Here you can think of as piece, right?
Pieces. Yeah, then player.
Then what you'll have player or persons, right?
Yeah.
Player. What other can you think? So these are the
Account,
two pieces interfaces. Any other idea? Yeah.
account, like you said.
Account, we can have player or account, I would say. Let's not go. You can have actually if you go about implementing, you will have this. But as I said, online chess platform will have multiple functionalities. Let's focus on the functionality of playing game, right? More than other things.
Board.
Right. So let's only concentrate on pieces, players. So these are the interfaces you will have. What are the classes that you will have?
Board. I mean, game would be the
Classes will be chessboard.
yeah.
And what?
Person.
Yep. Person will be an interface.
Okay.
Person will be an interface, which has already been there, right? Player.
Yeah. So
Now classes will obviously, which we have already discussed. These will be classes. Knight, pawn, etc. These will be classes.
then
In players, what can be the classes?
Machine and real person, something like that.
Yeah. So you can have machine, manual. That can be one type. Now machine will also be actually an interface. So let's not make it here. So if you so there is a player, and a player can be a machine or a player can be manual. Now machine, we wouldn't want to make the machine as a class because there are different type of machines. So like one machine can be like AlphaGo, one machine can be your XYZ. So you want these to be the classes. So a player. So if you can have a player, and then you can have again an interface of machine, and then you can have these things. So you can again have an interface machine, and then you can have machines like AlphaGo, and you can keep on adding specializations as they come. But if you create a class machine, you will have a hard time adding these things. Okay, so these are the basic things: pieces, player, machine. So let's not focus on. So let's firstly define, and then when functionality comes, we'll focus on one part: chessboard, pieces. What more will be there? So there will be a class called game controller or something. There will be a controller class, right? Or your main class where you will actually play the game. You'll have a game controller. So these are the main classes that will be there. Now let's talk about relationship. So how will you define relationships? Now there are classes. Let's see what classes you have. Relationship will be from classes. So chessboard, you have pieces. Then you have consider this also. So you have player. So player can be what? You can have a white player. You will have a black player, and then you have a game controller. So what is the relationship between them?
So
how can you define relationship?
Chessboard will have these pieces. I mean,
chessboard will have pieces. Okay, that's also one way to think. Chessboard can have pieces.
Okay.
And what will player have then?
Player. Okay.
No, that's fine. So the good thing about this, there's no right, no wrong. So you can define piece closely tied to player, or you can define pieces closely tied to chessboard. So both of these are correct designs. Your implementation will change. So this is fine. So you can have pieces on chessboard, and player can have only one function, move, right? So all he can do is he can pick a position, he can pick a piece and move, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. So player, as of now,
I can
player,
think of one more class which we can put it, maybe, I don't know, like each cells. I mean, each coordinates in the cell. Like in a chessboard, there
no,
will
that will be there in chessboard. That's
Okay.
that's why chessboard class is there. So firstly, so chessboard has pieces and chessboard has something else.
players.
Yes. So chessboard will have players. Now all of these are a valid design. So you can say player has chessboard, player has piece, chessboard has piece, chessboard has player. But what is correct and what is not will be in how easy it is to implement. So if you use player, closely tie the player with a piece, player's piece can change, or player and piece are not closely tied if you actually see functionality wise. Pieces are part of chessboard, right? In chessboard you need to have queries like what is there in position x and y. So if you have piece, then you are in a good position. A player, what a player has to do, player has to just pick a piece and move. Now picking a piece is just going to a coordinate, picking whatever is there and making a move. So you need to know the source and destination and you just make the move. So it's okay to not closely tie pieces with players. So this is how logically you will think functionality wise, right? Before thinking how to implement functionality wise, you sort it out in your mind that how you relate things. Now game controller. Now what will game controller do? Game controller, you can think is that it is the main function where you instantiate a chessboard, right? You'll instantiate a chessboard, you'll instantiate two players, you'll instantiate your pieces, and then player one dot move, player two dot move inside a while loop or something. And so game controller is a normal your main class. This is your runner program, and this will tie all the things up. So now let's go about and see how you can actually solve this problem. So you have chessboard class. Chessboard class will obviously have a matrix. So this is how you will draw the diagram. You don't need to be very factually right. And this is why we use UML, because I will use my notation, you will use your notation. So you'll have a matrix, 2D matrix, which will be the chessboard. Then you will have pieces. How many pieces are there on a chessboard? Anyone?
32.
Right, so there will be 32 pieces, there will be white pieces and then there will be black pieces. Does it make sense to have those two separately?
No, it should be. I mean, chessboard will have all the pieces together, right? So
Then how you will define the concept of white and black?
we have player, right? I mean, two players, white player and black.
Either way. So you can now have white player and you will have black player, right? And you will have pieces. You have your 32 pieces, you have your 2D matrix, you have one white player and you have one black player. Now what will player class do? Sorry, player is the interface, right? So white player is nothing but player white player. This is also player black player. Now what functionality will your player class have?
Move a piece.
Now think about the function definitions also. So 1 second. Okay.
It should have all the pieces which it can move.
So now you want to have a move function. So now Yeah, so don't go in detail like what if he moves. Okay, so what are you saying exactly? He should have,
No, you should have all the pieces which he can move. I mean, he can't
but
move.
you are not associating piece with a player, right? That's not what we did. We are associating a player. A player does not hold pieces. What all a player can do is this way. If you see, it will work. So you can define int. So let's say source x coordinate, source y coordinate, and destination x coordinate, and destination y coordinate. All you need is this. A player will say, this is the source and this is the destination. I want to make a move. Now, what this move function has to do, it needs to figure out that at x comma y, which piece is there, right? And the destination x comma y, can that piece move to that destination, right? This is what you will try to do. But so your move function will have this. So let's say you are calling player. Right now you have a player and you want to do player dot move. You have passed your coordinates. Now what all you need, that at x comma y coordinate, which piece is there, right? You need this information. So how you will get this information? So now chessboard has player, right? Chessboard has instance of type player, and player can move. So inside this class, when a player will move, then chessboard knows, right? Because chessboard has type player. So chessboard will know that what will be there in x position and what will be there in y position. Does it make sense? Are you guys able to get it? So what will happen is you will have chessboard cv dot white player dot move 3,5 to let's say 7,8. So now chessboard, it is being called in which class? Chessboard, right? Chessboard has white player and is calling move. So chessboard knows that 3,5 which piece is there, and it has to move to 7,8. So inside the move function, inside player.move, you will call piece.move. Are you guys able to follow how this is happening?
Yeah, but thing is, what I'm trying to understand is like, is it not chessboard doing a lot of stuff? I mean, he has to figure out whether this piece belongs to a player or not as well.
Why? Why does it need to figure out?
So, I mean, a white player can't move the black players. I mean, he say that in chessboard we have 32 pieces, right?
Yeah, that's right. So chessboard has all the information, right? That's how you type it. So I'm going by what you guys are saying. The point we are trying to do is so firstly, there is no right design and there is no wrong design. There can be design which are easy to implement and there can be some which is hard to implement. As you can see here, chessboard is not doing much, because if I write, there is also a piece class, and all piece is also doing is move. So now all chessboard class has to do, when a white player is trying to move at x and y position, it needs to know which piece is it, white or not, and just call piece.move. So all chessboard class will do inside, when chessboard.move will do, it will see when we call player.move.
अच्छा कहाँ यहाँ पे
Everybody saying something?
वहाँ पे अच्छा अच्छा अच्छा
Hello?
क्यूट है ना, पता है सुबह सुबह आती है। उस दिन क्या किया, उसको ना मेरा हर एक
Okay, there are some background noise. So now, as you can see that you have pieces, you have players. Now, when you do a player.move, you can pass position. And when you pass position, it will go to your chessboard class, because chessboard class has player. Chessboard class knows which color of piece it is. So if it is a valid move or not. And then you can have a validation. And then you can just call get piece, source x, source y. And once you get the piece, you try to make the move. Piece.move from this to this. If it is a valid move, you can move. If it's not, then you can't move. So functionality wise, it makes sense, right? This is how you will be able to implement this. Are there any doubts here?
I mean, yeah, to make it work, it looks good. But thing is, I feel that chessboard is doing a lot of stuff. I mean, he has to figure out.
So if you feel this, which is fine, now what you can do. So now this, which is good. If you're getting this thought, it is fine. Now what? So how do you, what responsibilities you want to remove out of chessboard? There are infinite ways in which you can design this game. Now what do you want to move? What extra do you think is happening? Chessboard should not have player.
I think it should not have pieces, I guess. I mean, and each player should have pieces. I don't know. I mean,
Okay, that is also fine. So if you strip chessboard of pieces, then now pieces will be there in players, right?
yeah.
So you'll have pieces there. Now let's see. Now whenever you create a type of chessboard, so you'll have chessboard dot white player dot move. Now you'll have x and y. Now more interesting thing. So chessboard has this 2D matrix. So do you want it to be here or do you want it also to move?
It should be there. I mean, we
Okay,
have
so-
64 places.
So now the problem is now let's take example of this move function, right? So now you are doing chessboard dot white player dot move, right? And you're passing some coordinate. So now this move is being passed to player. Player has piece, but how will you know at 3,5 location in chessboard which piece is there? You have stripped pieces out of chessboard. Now what's the mapping? Are you able to get this? Where will this information lie? That at this location, which piece is there? Because you removed pieces outside your chessboard class. Right, so these are the choices that you have to make. So there are ways to solve it. You can say we'll have a map with all the x, y positions to the pieces. But when you start doing this, you will see that there are some extra things, extra data structures you need to maintain. And is it complicating the design or not? Firstly, it is solvable via any method you want. But how easy or how hard it is, that's the main idea, right? So you are getting the disadvantage if you take away pieces from your chessboard class, yes or no?
Yeah.
Right? So this is the main thing. So you can still go ahead and implement this. There's no doubt about it. But I personally think that pieces has to be associated with chessboard. You can maybe you can choose not to associate player with chessboard. You can remove player out of it. But again, so if you remove player out of it and you want to say you want a player to move, so now actually you can do this. You can remove player out of this, but again, chessboard needs to know the pieces. Now player controls the move. So if a player wants to move something at let's say something, so now you don't pass in coordinate, you pass piece. Again, there is some link missing, right? So how do you actually make a move now? What input will you pass? In other words, what's the link between player class and chessboard class? Currently, chessboard class is all these things. Now, player has to have some link between chessboard and the chessboard or the pieces to make the move. So it has to share something, right? So player, either you now you think in this term that chessboard is just an entity. It just has pieces and a matrix. Player is the main thing now. So player will have chessboard, right? And player. So once player has chessboard, so now there is another way to design, which is this. So you can say my chessboard is not that powerful now. You are trying to distribute the responsibility. So you make chessboard. Chessboard has pieces, right? It only has pieces. And now you have player. Your player has a chessboard. Because there has to be one link between chessboard and player. Now, if player has chessboard, it can do whatever it wants to, and your chessboard is also light, right? So this is one way to solve this. Is it clear?
I have one question here. Like, if you're saying player will have chessboard, that means we can typically in chess we have two players, right? So both the player will have a.
Yeah, that's also fine. Both players can have one chessboard. That is fine. Think it in this term. So chessboard is a class. Player is having a member of this class. So there will be one object of type chessboard, and these both player will have that same object. So let's say you have chessboard. CB equal to new chessboard, and then when you make the player class, player white player, so in the constructor, let's say you pass chessboard, and for black player, also you pass chessboard. Make sense? You pass the same chessboard, and now white player dot move, you can do black player dot move. Understanding?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is one way in which you can make your chessboard class light. But obviously, I don't see how you can. So if you remove pieces from chessboard, it will actually complicate things. You will have to have maps and all, right? So this is also one correct way to approach. So this is how you will make your design choices roughly. So this is now how you. And before proceeding, we will. So what I wanted to cover is your UML diagram. So those 4 steps are clear, right? Firstly, you define interface, you identify interface, then you identify classes, then you identify relationship. Like you are trying to identify a different set of relationship. I can think differently, and depending on the relationship, my class will change. So after you do this exercise, then you start implementing. If you start implementing, then you will have to change a lot of things. So firstly, sort in your head. If you think chessboard is heavy, so remove player outside chessboard. If you think chessboard is doing a lot of things, if you think chessboard is doing less thing, keep player inside, it's okay. And then you can, so there is no good, as I said, there's no correct or incorrect, there's good and bad design. So it's up to you. So if a design is complicated, we'll say it is bad. If a design is simple, we will say it's good. So that we will keep on doing when we do a specific use case. So for today, we will cover the basic concepts, right? So let's see what UML diagram is. So UML diagram has multiple representations. So we have use case diagram. Then we have class diagram. Then we have sequence diagram. And then we have activity diagram. And all of these, you will be using them. And you will see all of these make sense depending upon the use case. So firstly, use case diagram. So I have some sample for use case diagram. This is how you will be drawing. So this is a complicated use case diagram of a library system. So this is how a real system would look like. So this is, let's say, a member of library. This is librarian. So inside a library, you can be a member or you can be the admin who is the librarian, right? So what a member can do, a member can search in your library. So you can search the catalog, you can search by book, you can search by author, subject. So depending upon the use case, you are drawing this diagram, right? This is different to the class diagram that we are seeing. So this is use case diagram. So firstly, you draw the use case diagram to understand. So now let's draw the same diagram for our use case, which is chess. So let's see how it would look like. So for chess, what will your use case diagram be look like? Firstly, you draw a system boundary. Right, this is your game of chess, and this is your player. This is white. This is black. These are your actors. In use case diagram, we don't think in terms of classes. We think in terms of business use case point of view, as you can see. And inside this, what a player can do. So take help from here. So you define the functionality. Like you can search, you can check out a book. Similarly, inside a chess game, what a player can do. We discussed this, right? What players can do? Players can, depending upon how you are visualizing. So according to me, they can move, right?
Start
they can
again.
move pieces, right? Also, they can log in. So they can log in, they can move pieces. What else can they do?
Start a game, restart a, reset a
They
game.
can start the game. They can log out. So these are the use cases, basic use cases which will happen. So you can log in, you can move pieces, you can start game, and you can log out. Now, in use case, if you want to, so what are your other actors? So your actors are this. If you are moving a piece, then after this, what is happening? So take a reference from here. So here you define the end-to-end flow, right? So let's say you are searching a book. So there are many ways in which you can search a book. You can search by name, author, or let's say you're trying to do checkout. So you can check out a book. And in that case also you need to make sure you are covering the case of fine or something, right? So if you want to pay a fine, you can pay a fine. So in this case also think if you are moving a piece, then there are many pieces that you can move, but you don't have to think in terms of class diagram. So a player can move a piece, start a game, play a game. So more than move piece, this should be play game. So these are the use cases that you are trying to solve. And there is no admin here, so it is a simple use case diagram. That's it. So all we would try to solve, so this use case diagram tells that we will cover login, we'll cover the authentication, we'll cover playing game. Playing game will include obviously start game and logout. This is also authentication. So this is simple use case diagram, which basically you draw when you get the requirement, right? So in this example, all you would have to do is there are two players which are playing a game of chess. They can log in, they can play game, they can start, they can log out. That's it. Class diagram is something that we discussed, but there are some notations that you can use. So this is a sample UML class diagram, and I'll just tell you what are the notations mean. So one of you asked, right, that one chessboard will be shared across two players. So and this is how you denote this. So this, you will have an arrow saying that chessboard is shared across player, and you can write two, one to many. One star means many, one means one. Star means many to many. So this is the sort of representation. So if there is an arrow, then it means extends, which basically means that account is the generic type and librarian and member are an instance of type account. It's the interface to EA. Relationships are generally defined by this. You tell if it is one-to-one or one-to-many or what. So now we already did this. So let's see how our representation will look like. So our representation, as discussed, we have one chessboard. You will, and obviously before all of that, all your data members have to be defined first. And so inside your class diagram, there is three separations. First is the title of class, second is the data member, and third is function. Okay, so try to use this notation. So as we did, right? So firstly we had pieces. There 32. Then there was a design where we had player inside. There were two players, and then there was chessboard. You can have some functions, right? Just start game or initialize. Initialize will basically set your pieces. Now you will have a player. So as you can see, player will be here. Now there will be one chessboard and there will be two players. So this is how you'll draw a diamond. You'll write 1 and 2, and you'll write what properties player has. Now player, as we discussed, you will have just move, and obviously player will have all other things like name of player, age of player, user ID, stuff like that. And then we also have your piece, which is a generic type. So your classes rook, etc. extend from this. So this arrow. So remember, this is diamond representing a relationship. Arrow represents extending, right? So it means that rook is a type of class piece. Similarly, knight, if at all it is there, then it will mean that it is also extending from the type piece. Now what can pieces do? So pieces will also have some members, and again they will have move. So this is how you will keep defining, right? So this is the classic. If you do, this is more logical, and this will look good also. So it will be easier for you to explain as well. So data member set in one place, and then we have sequence and activity diagram. These two are very less used, so we will do them when the need comes. But sequence diagram, in other words, is generally with respect to time, how things are moving. So, so I can show you some examples. Let's see if we have some example of sequence diagram. So okay, so we will cover it in another class, tomorrow's class. The sequence diagram and activity diagram we generally don't use in interviews or something, because the use case diagram you will definitely use to solidify the requirements that is coming from the interviewer. You would want to document it, and after that you will draw the class diagram. Sequence diagram is also we do in some cases, but I don't think we will be doing that inside an interview or something, but I will cover that in the next class. So for today's class, let's keep it till here, right? So are there any doubts what we covered today? So what all did we do? So firstly, we read about objects and classes. Then we discussed about paradigms, encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism. Then we discussed how can you approach an object-oriented design problem. So there were 4 steps, right? Identify the interface, identify the class, identify relationship, then solidify your design using a use case diagram and a class diagram. Firstly, you draw the use case diagram, then you draw the class diagram, solidify it, and after that you start implementing. So this is how roughly you will approach things. So any doubts in this basic, what all we discussed? So in next class onwards, how we will move is we will pick up a topic, let's say library management system, or let's say chess, and we will actually do this exercise which you would do in an interview. So let's say I do chess. So one of you will say, I don't think this design is good, something should go here, something should go there. We will discuss the pros and cons and we will come up with a design, and then we will try to see how we can implement it. Obviously we won't implement it, but we will do something like we did for today, right? Using P's class, we will more generalize it for chess class. We won't like go ahead and implement what goes inside move. We will do on use case basis, but our main idea will be to how to approach this problem in an interview, right? You don't write the entire code base there. You basically tell that you can write it if you are given the opportunity to. You are not talking things superficially. So you need to have ideas sorted and represent that in a presentable manner. So this is how we will move forward. So next class, most likely we will do design chess. So in that we will have this discussion, like what do you think should be there, what should not be there. We will discuss on what use cases we will try to cover. So playing chess is one aspect. You can have one more for login authentication. You can have one more use case to hook 2 players up for a chess game. How would you do that? Randomly 2 players are logging in, then how do you set players up for a match? So all of these use cases we will try to cover on use by use. So this will be a use case study. So basically our goal is that in an interview, if some question is asked, how to approach it. So we will do it in that fashion. So from next class onward, there will be one interview question and how we should solve it. So in that lines we will be moving. So any doubt in what we discussed today, at least? Any doubt? So you guys can, so any clarifications you want about the course topics or anything?
Hi Aditya, so will you be discussing about the design patterns as well? I mean,
yeah, so design patterns we will discuss. So one interview question, like let's say we pick chess. So in chess, you are not basically using most of the design pattern, but let's say we will have a class where you will be doing, let's say something which uses an observation design pattern. So what we will do, we will cover that design pattern and then we will solve. So our methodology will be like objective oriented. Like we will discuss the problem, and to solve that problem, if we need to cover a design pattern, we will cover. And the use cases that we have, I have made sure we cover all the basic 4 or 5 design patterns that are there, which are singleton. Singleton we are going to cover in chess only. Your chessboard class will be singleton, depending on the design. So what singleton is, what is observation, publisher subscriber design pattern, what is abstract factory. So these all we will cover depending on the use case. And why did I design it? Why not design pattern first? Because it is very, it gets a little demotivating to study something when you don't know what's the use of it, right? So if you are solving a problem and inside that, if there is a design pattern, we discuss that. I think it's much better to understand as well. So that will be the idea. So the goal is to crack interviews, and in that process, we will be covering what design patterns are needed. So there are not many design patterns that you need to know. Abstract factor is something which is very common. Publisher subscriber will be very common. Let's say we do a design of logger, right? A logger, how logger works in your service. So it will have a publisher subscriber design pattern. Your logger is as a service. All other service want to log, so they want to call your logger. How does that happen, right? So that will be publisher subscriber design pattern. Then we will have a factory, as I already told. We will have singleton. So these are 3. Then there is a strategy design pattern, right? So these are the 4 main design patterns which will be there. There are many others, but I don't think you will. So think of design patterns as a tool to solve the main problem. Nobody will ask you a question, what is this, what is that? People will expect you to solve a problem, and inside the problem, if you can come up with a good design pattern to solve it, it's good, right? So this will be the main idea. Make sense? And also for one interview question, we will have 2 classes, right? So Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday we will brainstorm, we will discuss the design pattern that we will use. On Sunday we will try to implement it. So you will be covering a lot of things inside one. So main idea will be that drill deep. So we will have one question and we will try to drill deep inside it, rather than covering more and more and touching each superficially. So our main idea will be to how much drill deep, how much doubts you can ask, how much clarifications I can give you guys, so that the main purpose is solved, right? Make sense? Did I answer your question?
Oh yeah. Pretty much answer the question.
Okay. So that's all for today. So I wanted it to be the introductory class. I've just discussed, I've set the context, right? We have discussed the basic things. Try to cover these up if you have any doubts. Like, these are basic things anyways. And from next class onward, I will post the topic that I'm going to cover on the group beforehand. Let's say 2-3 days before, whenever I finalize what we are going to cover. And then we will we'll meet on Saturday. We will discuss the question. We will see what's the use case diagram, or what are the use cases that we are looking to solve in this. We will brainstorm on what design choices you guys are. So this has to be interactive, right? Because if you tell what ideas are coming in your brain, it will be good for you also. If I tell my idea, this is unlike data structure class, where your idea and my idea has to be the same if you are solving a problem in the most optimized fashion. So if, let's say, I ask you a sorting question in best merge sort, it can't be my idea of merge sort different, your idea of merge sort different. But if I ask you to design chess, your idea can be different, my idea can be different, and both can work equally good. So it is important for you also to brainstorm, interact, how you are trying to design. Go ahead with your implementation, get stuck, right, and then figure out how you can tweak the design. So that basically the main idea is that you make all the mistakes here and not in an interview, right? You can solve these problems, if you have infinite amount of time. But we are trying to get into you will have 45 minutes to solve a problem. So the more and more experience you have in drilling down a topic, the better you will be at these interviews. So that's the main idea. Okay. If you guys don't have any questions, then we'll end the session, right?
Aditya Singh is, the convener. I am Aditya Prakash. I will be taking this course. So my name is saying Aditya Singh because I am using his login. Myself is Aditya Prakash. Aditya Singh, you can contact him about timing. So I think there was one. He also wants to know what timing everybody is comfortable in for Saturday and Sunday. So you can discuss that with him. We will keep you updated on the group as well. So any questions? Otherwise, we'll end. Okay. Any questions for me? No. Okay. Cool then. Thank you guys for joining. We'll meet next week. Okay. Thank you.